have a hardboard and my watercolor paper and a couple of scrap papers taped onto the cardboard here. That's just to prevent the watercolor paper from buckling when I add water and paint onto the paper. And then over here I have this stencil that I made on Procreate and just transferred over to my phone. This is what I'm going to teach how to paint tomorrow at the workshop. And then over here I just have my pencil and my eraser, and this was the first practice painting that I did yesterday or a couple of days ago. I can't remember, but yeah. Okay, so I'm going to have this stencil linked in the description down below if you are interested in following along this tutorial. Here it is if you can't see it. So what I'm going to do is just go ahead and draw that onto the paper here and then go from there. I think I'm happy with that. It's a little bit over to the left. I could have done it to the right a bit more, but you know what? That's okay. This is our practice for the workshop tomorrow, so we will go ahead and go with that sketch. Okay, since I don't have my table in here right now, my painting situation is not ideal, but I just have this lap pillow with a hard surface on it, and that is what I'm painting on. So yeah, I have my stencil ready here. I have 3 brushes that I'm going to use, one small, one medium, and one large. These are the Winsor & Newton Series 7 Finest Sable. I have them in the sizes 0, 2, and 3. Oh, if you can see that. Here we go. And then I'm going to be using the Winsor & Newton Cotman Traveler Pocket palette. All the colors that I'm going to be using are on here. But yeah, we're going to be using lemon yellow, cadmium red, alizarin crimson, sap green, viridian green, and yellow ochre, and burnt umber for the trunk or the little stem of the apple there. So I will walk you through everything step by step. Yeah, and then I also have a rag and a little piece of paper towel if I need to lift anything off of the painting if I make a mistake. And then I have a jar of water to rinse my brushes with. It's just out of frame right now because, you know. Alright, so with my large brush, I'm going to grab lemon yellow. And I'm just going to do a light mixture of it. And I'm going to place that just on the bottom left part of this apple. And then I'm going to go ahead and do the same thing with the apple behind the main apple. So I'm just going to give that a few minutes to dry. And then with the same large brush, I'm going to grab a mixture of alizarin crimson and cadmium red. Again, just a very light mixture of the two. And then cover the entire apples with that color. So for now, I'm going to avoid touching the wet part down here with the yellow because I don't want the colors to bleed together. So I'm going to start from the top and then work my way down. Just a little piece of hair on there, so I'm going to lift that off with my brush. Oh my, it is not coming off. There we go. All right. So I'm going to grab the same mixture of the alizarin crimson and cadmium red and drop that down here. Okay, there we go. I am happy with that. So that is it for the first layer of the apples. So far we have used lemon yellow and then a mixture of cadmium red and alizarin crimson. Obviously with lots of water. We just want a light base layer for now, and we are going to let that dry completely before we touch the apples again. So while we're waiting for those to dry, we can go ahead and move on to the leaves. And for the leaves, we are going to use sap green. Just a very light mixture of that, so less color and more water on the brush. And then I'm just gonna use the same brush, the large brush that I had, and cover the entire leaves with the light mixture of sap green. So we just want a nice even layer. I'm just going to drag that down to the stem of the leaf. And then, yeah, go ahead and cover all of the leaves. Yeah, just make sure your apple is dry. So over here, the green kind of meets the red there, but because it's dry, the colors don't bleed together. But if that apple part is still wet, you would see the green kind of bleed into the red there. So just be mindful of that. Okay, all the leaves are now covered in sap green. So we are going to let that dry. I'm just going to bring this up to the camera here so you can see what we've done so far. And when you look at the paper here, the shiny parts are definitely the wet parts. And then the ones that are dry are just not shiny anymore. Okay, so I'm going to put that down. Give that a few minutes to dry. And then while waiting for the leaves to dry, I'm going to grab my smallest brush. So this is the size 0, but yeah, use whatever size you have or whatever kind of brush you have. But you want to grab your smallest one, and then off of your palette there, just use burnt umber or a brown color. And just paint the little piece of branch here attached to the apple. Again, being mindful of what is wet on the paper and what isn't. So I'm being careful not to touch the leaves, and also being careful not to smudge the green with my fingers when I'm painting. There we go. We are also going to let that dry. Alright, so now that everything is dry, I'm going to go ahead and go back to the apple here. And this time I'm going to use my medium brush. I have it in the size 2, but then again, use whatever size brush or type of brush you have. And then I'm going to go ahead and do a stronger mixture of the alizarin crimson and the cadmium red. Test that onto my scrap paper. Perfect. And I'm going to just drop that paint right along the outside or the edges of the front apple here. So as you can see, the contrast between this strong mixture and the light mixture that we already have on the paper. Alright, and then with my large brush, I'm going to clean it so there's no color on it. And I'm just going to keep it damp. With that brush, I'm going to brush along the edges of the color that I just dropped. And that just creates a nice, soft blending or gradient on the inside where we brushed, where we drop the color there. So it creates that nice gradient look and not so much of a harsh line when we're putting the color down. And I'm going to continue doing that all around this apple here. And again, taking that damp, clean brush and brushing along the inner edges of the paint that we just dropped. Just to blend it in nicely. And now there's color on it, so I'm going to rinse that off with water and then continue to blend right here. And then with my brush with the color, I'm going to go ahead and drop more of that stronger mixture of cadmium red in alizarin crimson where I want it to go. So I don't want to cover the yellow entirely with this color, so I'm going to leave some parts just purely yellow over there. And then I'm going to keep adding that stronger mixture where I want it to go. Obviously looking at my reference photo and seeing where the shadows are on this apple. So the shadows are going to be the darker parts of the apple, and leaving some parts light. It creates that illusion that, you know, in real life when light is hitting an object, it doesn't hit the whole thing. Some parts are in the shadow and some parts are the lights where the light is shining on some parts. Alright, so I'm actually going to bring that color all the way down. Well, maybe not all the way down, but part way down, like so. And then use my damp clean brush to blend, getting rid of any harsh lines that I'm seeing. And then alternating with my brush with the color, I'm just going to drop more color onto that apple. There we go. Actually, while waiting for it to dry, I'm just going to go ahead and work on the other apple, just trying to avoid the wet parts down here. So I'm going to start with this part. So that is the same mixture of alizarin crimson and cadmium red. And then with a damp, clean brush, I'm just blending the harsh lines down here. So eventually the back apple is going to be darker than the front one, but because this part is wet here, I just want to try and avoid that for now. But I'm going to add more color along the edges of the back apple. And I'm blending that with the damp, clean brush. And there we go. Okay, so we're going to let that dry. I'm going to clean all of my brushes. And then with my medium brush, I'm going to mix Viridian green and yellow ochre. Test that onto my scrap paper. And then drop that color on the inside of the leaves. So you see how the outside here, or the leaf here, is flipped? I just want to go ahead and drop that color on the inside of the leaf. So avoiding the part that is flipped. All right, so there we go. We have the inside of the leaves painted with the mixture of viridian green and yellow ochre. And we are just gonna let that dry. And then, actually no, there is one more leaf that we have covered here. This one right here. I'm just going to clean my brush and then I'll bring this closer to the camera just to reassess where we're at. There we go. So yeah, our painting is not looking as flat as it did at the beginning with just the base layer or the flat wash of the, you know, the light mixture of the red and the yellow and green. Now we're trying to create that depth by adding darker colors and mimicking the lights and shadows as, you know, it would look in a picture or in real life even. I don't know if I showed you my reference photo, but let me pull it up and show you on the camera. Here it is. I'm not copying it exactly, but I'm just trying to use it as a reference as to where the shadows are and where, you know, the light is hitting the leaves and the parts of the apples there. So that is what I mean by lights and shadows. Okay, so we're going to go back to the front apple here. I'm going to take my medium brush and dip it in the cadmium red and alizarin crimson. Bit of a stronger mixture than the previous one. And then kind of just drop that color on the top left side of the apple. When I was looking at my reference photo, this part of the apple was a little bit darker than the rest of it. And then I'm going to take my large, damp, clean brush and then just gently blend the harsh line over there. All right. Again, we'll wait for that to dry. And then with my medium brush, I'm going to take that cadmium red and alizarin crimson mix again and work on the back apple here. I want to create the illusion that this is in the back, so obviously the front apple is going to look lighter compared to the back apple. So we are going to make this apple in the back nice and dark. There we go. And then with the damp, clean brush, we're just going to blend the edges here. There we go. And we're going to let that dry again. And then now we're going to go back to the leaves. Okay, so with my smallest brush, it's clean at the moment, I am going to take a strong mixture of viridian green and yellow ochre. So we're adding more paint now and less water because we're going to start working on the finer details of the painting. I'm going to take that color and practice it on my scrap paper, make sure I'm happy with it. And if I am, I'm going to go ahead and work on the finer details of the leaves. Alright, so I'm going to start with this leaf here and just trace the lines on the leaves. Starting with the middle line. And then I'm going to take my medium brush and clean it, make sure there's no color on it. And we're going to blend that line ever so slightly, just to get rid of that harsh line look. Alright, so I'm going to leave that and then move on to the other leaves, one leaf at a time. And then again, with my medium brush that's clean and damp, I'm going to soften the edges here. There's a lot of blending involved in watercolor painting, especially if you're trying to go for that realistic look. So we're going to leave that leaf and move on to the next one. This one has multiple curved lines. With my damp clean brush, I'm going to soften the edges one by one. If you find that there is too much paint on your blending brush, just wipe it on your rag or rinse it with your water before you move on to the next line. Alright, switching over to my small brush with the color, I'm going to work on more lines over here. So yeah, we're using the same technique on all of the leaves, but we're just working on them one by one, waiting for each leaf or line to dry. Okay. Let's see if the top leaf is dry. I think so. Let's go back to it and work on the rest of the lines on the leaf. Take my damp clean brush and just blend them ever so slightly. And then cleaning my blending brush in between. Alright. And then with that same color, I'm just gonna fill in the stems of the leaves here. Actually, oh yeah, one more here. Okie doke. So now we're gonna wait for the leaves to dry. Okie dokie. I think all of the leaves are dry, but for now we're going to keep working on the apples. I want to make the back apple even darker, so I'm going to take my medium brush and create a stronger mixture of the alizarin crimson and cadmium red. And we're going to drop that down here, just below the front apple. Okay, and I'm just going to clean my brush and use that to blend down here. And I think I'm happy with the back apple. And I'm going to go back to the front apple and just darken the top left half of it. So right over here. And cleaning my brush off and blending those edges. Okay. A little bit more up here. A little bit more color. And blend. Alright, and then I'm going to take my small brush and grab a darker mixture of the burnt umber. And we're just going to darken the left side of the stem here. Well, maybe the top a bit. And then we're going to rinse the same brush, make sure there's no paint on it, leave it damp, and then blend the edges. There we go. I'm going to rinse that same brush and then go to that dark mixture of viridian green and yellow ochre that we used earlier for the lines on the leaves, and then I'm just going to work on the back side of these leaves. We also have some lines on them, so I'm just going to take my small brush and drop the colors on the lines. Rinse the same brush quickly and use that to blend those lines. Okay. I'm seeing some hard lines forming on the front apple, so I'm just going to take my medium brush, clean one, and then just brush along those harsh lines to soften them. There's some on the back apple here too. Harsh lines are not a bad thing. If that is the look you're going for, feel free to just leave them. But if you don't like them, you can always take a damp clean brush and go over them to soften them. Alright, so with my medium brush, I'm going to take sap green and then drop that where we put the yellow on the apples here. So just right along the edges now, like so. And just leave it there. I'm going to do the same thing with the back apple. And just leave it there. And with that same brush, I'm just cleaning it, and I'm going to grab, actually I shouldn't have cleaned it. I meant to grab more of the sap green, just a light mixture of it, and then we're going to go over the flipped sides of the leaves. Just to add more color there because you're looking really pale. Alright, we're going to wait for everything to dry, and then once the apples are completely dry, I'm just going to go over with a wash of lemon yellow right here where it's kind of pale looking. So we're just going to give that a few minutes, let it dry, and then do that. Okay, so it is all dry, and with my medium brush, I'm just going to grab a little bit of lemon yellow and just go over the light parts of the apple here. And I'm going to do the same thing with the back apple. Oop, that's too much yellow. Lift that off with my clean brush, and or maybe just spread it around. Oops. Okay, we are getting there. So with the smallest brush, I'm going to take that dark mixture of viridian green and yellow ochre again, and I'm just going to drop that over here on the flipped side of the leaves. And then with my medium clean brush, I'm just going to blend that slightly. And I'm going to do the same thing with the other leaves. just going to take that same color and darken the inside of this leaf here. Just looks too pale compared to the rest of the inside of the leaves. So I'm dropping a little bit of color there and then using my clean brush to spread it upwards. There we go. And then same thing with this leaf here. It's supposed to be behind this leaf, so I'm just going to make the inside of it a bit darker. So using that same mixture of viridian hue and yellow ochre, just going to drop some color down here. And then using my damp clean brush to just spread the color upwards. There you go. Creates the illusion that this leaf is behind that leaf, just by making it a tad darker. And then I'm going to do the same trick here on this leaf, just dropping a little bit on the top of the leaf and then blending it with the damp clean brush. We don't want to spread it all the way down, but just a little bit to create that illusion that over here is darker. I'm going to do the same thing with this leaf. And then same thing with this leaf here. Just making the tips a bit darker. And we'll do that over here as well. So I'm just dropping that dark color where I think the light isn't hitting the leaves, just to create that illusion of a shadow. You can always go back to your reference photo to mimic that, or you can just do it intuitively. Place it where you want to place it. Okay. All right, there we go. So we are done with the leaves. One last thing that I want to do is just make the edges of these apples darker. So with my smallest brush, I'm going to take a strong mixture of the alizarin crimson and cadmium red and just brush that along the edges of these apples. And then with my medium brush that's clean and damp, I'm just going to brush along these edges ever so slightly. I don't want to spread the color around, but I just want to soften the edges. Okay. And we'll do that same thing down here on the back apple. And then we'll do the same thing right along here. And we'll do the same thing down here. And then a little bit over here. Maybe a little bit more over here. And then I think I'm just going to add it over here as well. And a little bit over here. Okay. All right, so I think we are happy with that. I'm going to rinse all of my brushes here and let this painting completely dry, and then I'll go ahead with my eraser and just erase any pencil mark that is left, and then go from there. Okay, so there we have it. That is the final product of our painting for today. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. If you did, please like and comment down below what tutorial you want to see next from me.